Hey everyone, today I'll be presenting on the introduction to our method for learning Mandarin. So first, for today's agenda, we're going to talk about issues with current Mandarin learning methods, introduction to 代如 Qian method, and adaptation to English speakers. So issues with current Mandarin learning methods. First, what is the method for most Mandarin courses? It focuses on useful phrases and sentences. It follows the principle of most important aspect for language learning is interest, and it follows extensive workbooks such as writing sentences, stroke orders, and lessons. This all sounds really good, right? So for example, an example lesson might be how to order at a restaurant. And it would have phrases like 菜单, 点菜, 服务员, which is menu, ordering food, waiter and waitress. Then it might also have example sentences such as 请给我一个菜单, please give me a menu. Or 服务员,我可以点菜了, waiter, I'm ready to order. After these example phrases and example sentences, then you'll have example exercises in the workbook, such as write 菜单 5 times, or how would you say, please give me a menu, or what does the sentence mean, 服务员,我可以点菜. This all makes a lot of sense and sounds like a good lesson, until you realize the issue with this method is it jumps straight to complicated characters with no foundation. What do I mean by this? For example, in the phrase 菜单, dan is actually composed of two other characters, 田, which means field, and 十 means 10. So actually, you can often memorize the character 单 based on a list. 单 is just a field of options where you can count more than 10 items. So actually, before you even learn the character 单, you should learn field and 10 before that. But oftentimes these lessons don't take that into consideration and jump to really complicated characters without teaching the fundamental characters. So when we look again at this example lesson of how to order at a restaurant, even in the example vocabulary, there's a lot of smaller characters like here or here or here that the lesson is not teaching and is instead jumping straight to complicated words. So what this does is it makes characters difficult and boring. It often leads to an early focus on grammar, and oftentimes they will emphasize stroke order for no reason. So what often I see is fast progress early on, but stagnation and frustration later. So how does this method differ? So this method is from 代如 Qian. Example on the right is one of his textbooks. And he's a researcher at China's Central Institute of Educational Science. He's the former senior title reviewer for the National Education Commission, and his method reports results like learning 2,500 characters in about 2 years and writing 300 character short essays. So his core philosophy is that Mandarin should be treated differently and uniquely. It builds around the unique logic of Hanzi, treating characters as the core unit of reading and writing. It's character first, so it's form, sound, and meaning for stronger recall, and learners build literacy that is both fast and culturally grounded. So, for example, here's an example lesson. Lesson, 田里南. If you notice here, all of the characters build up to make the third character. So, for example, for this one, the last character, nan, is composed of two characters. On top is tian, which means field, and li, which means power or work. So a male, which is what this character means, is someone who works in the fields. Sorry for the built-in misogyny. But as you see, the lessons in itself builds upon simple characters to teach you more and more complex characters. Or another example is here, 无正 Y. Y means crooked. So 不, which is no, and 正, which is straight. So when something is not straight, it is crooked. So Dai shows how foundational characters combine to form the meaning and pronunciation of other more complex characters in each lesson. This quickly builds a repertoire of characters through building upon each other, and it makes characters, usually the most painful part of Mandarin, fun and puzzle-like. So, additional aspect, it starts from learning phrases early. It builds gradual approximate understanding. It helps learn sentences early, gaining confidence and understanding and forming connections, and all characters are in top 5,000 frequency. So, one hard aspect of Mandarin is that meaning for characters comes from how they combine. Oftentimes, you'll hear non-native speakers say, how do you translate this character? And my response will be, I have no idea. Because this character can mean, when combined, to get a taxi. It can mean to call someone. It can mean to give a discount. It can mean to vaccinate. It can mean to type, and it can mean to go to work. So this character only has an approximate meaning, but its true meaning really only comes when it combines with other characters. So for an example lesson here, it also comes with review phrases and sentences. And here, now it starts teaching you the approximate meaning of characters through teaching you what phrases it can form. So, but there are downsides to this method. Initial progress is hard to notice as it focuses on building a strong foundation. A friend of mine asked, when can I have a conversation with someone? And the unfortunate thing is oftentimes you will have to wait a while. And his method is built for Chinese children raised in China. So how do we adapt this to English speakers? One is we will utilize techniques such as spaced repetition and audio immersion. We'll do increased emphasis on reading and recognizing characters, and we'll utilize English knowledge to increase mnemonic emphasis. So I would argue here that reading is more important than writing, listening, and speaking for beginner Mandarin speakers who are English speakers. Why do I say that? First, writing is the least important. For English speakers, learning pinyin is much easier and more helpful. Even in professional settings, most Chinese people type rather than write. Memorizing how to write characters is insanely difficult and so complex. And as mentioned previously, so many textbooks focus on stroke order when stroke order is purely not important. It can help with understanding structure and memorization, but it should only be supplemental and for increasing interest. Next, but why reading over listening or speaking? What's the point in reading the language if I cannot have a conversation or understand what other people are saying? So I would argue listening and speaking are incredibly important, but incredibly difficult for beginners. Unlike other languages where one sound in Mandarin can have tens of different meanings, making listening feel almost impossible. For example, 睡觉,睡觉,睡觉 all mean drastically different things. 睡觉 means sleep. 睡觉 means who is calling for me, and 水饺 means dumpling.
Okay, also.
So, also for speaking, tones are incredibly difficult for non-native speakers. If you start speaking too early, you can develop bad habits, and it's difficult to change later on. That's why reading is the only way to pause the language, giving time to stop, analyze the character, and create connections. Most importantly, reading opens the door to immersion and personalized hobbies. For example, I only learned Mandarin for 2 years, but afterwards, through reading history books, reading 三国演义, one of the most famous literature works, from reading light novels, from playing card games, reading allowed me to retain my interest and still improve it despite not learning it anymore. With reading, you can watch shows, movies, whatever you want, especially now with subtitles, and it develops your speaking and listening. So in conclusion, we're going to use Dai's incredible textbook with a specific focus on characters. We're going to adapt his methods to English speakers, and our goal is to make Mandarin learning more fun and profound foundation for long-term growth. Thank you so much. Any questions?